Hello, welcome back to the channel. If you are new, thank you for stopping by. In today's episode of This Week I Learned, I will give you a crash course into creating AWS infrastructure as code with AWS CloudFormation service. If you have some experience with AWS, feel free to skip ahead to the next chapter. If you are new to AWS, then stick around to clear your concepts of why infrastructure as code. So if you're new, you would typically use the AWS console to create certain AWS resources. For example, I want to create AWS EC2 instances, which is virtual servers in the cloud. So once I log into my console, I can directly search for EC2 and go to the EC2 dashboard. Here, I can launch instances quickly by clicking on Launch Instance, and it will take me through a wizard. Now this wizard will help me select what should be the name, what should be the size of this virtual machine, one CPU, how much GB RAM you want, what kind of operating system you want, and certain security configurations as well. So let's do that quickly. Let me call it Demo 1. And for the operating system and the applications that I want to be installed on it, there are a lot of different options. For now, I'm going to select as Amazon Linux. Yes, Amazon has its own Linux as well. So I'm selecting Amazon Linux 2. Okay, and there's a lot of information there. You can ignore it for now. All you need to note is that every instance is created from something called as Amazon machine image. And this is the AMI ID. So every machine image is recognized by its own ID, and this is the AMI ID for it. Now, each machine image has different operating systems and maybe have some other applications installed in it, but it's a bundle from which your virtual servers will be created in the cloud. So I'm looking at it, I'm saying, yes, it should be 64-bit, it should be a particular AMI ID. I scroll further, I can also select what should be the configuration, how many vCPUs it should have, how many GB memory it should have. So I can select that from this long list of instance types. Then I'm just going with T2.micro. It's free tier eligible, so could be free for me if it's a new account, but it's not. But I can still continue using T2.micro. There's also a key pair. If you are going to be logging into this EC2 instance, you should definitely provide a key pair. You can create a key pair using this option. But for now, as a demo, I'm not logging in. I'm just showing you how to create. So I'm just proceeding without key pair. Everything else, I'm just keeping it as a default. There's also a firewall available, which is called a security group. So you can create new, or you can select your existing firewalls as well. So I'm just going to select the default firewall or security group here, and everything else I'm just keeping as default. I'm saying I just want one instance of this type, and I'm just going to click on launch instance, and that's it. It's going to launch this EC2 instance for me. Once it's created, when it's running, I can go ahead and connect to it. But think about this. In real world scenario, when you are managing AWS for your company, you would not just be creating one resource or one EC2 instances, right? So for example, if I had to tell you that you have to create 10 different instances with 10 different configurations, go ahead and create that. What would you have to do? You would actually have to go through that wizard 10 times to actually differentiate between 10 different use cases. Now, in real world, it actually multiplies into hundreds and thousands of different instances as well. So how do people actually create this infrastructure? How can I make it more repeatable? Because in real world, your architectures are also not easy. They could be complex architectures with lots and lots of different resources that need to talk to each other, need to be configured so that your entire application can actually work. So how do people do this? Because if I have to tell you to create all the resources from this architecture, some of you might give up, or because it might take you not hours, easily days to actually create these with the AWS console. So is there an easier way to actually create all these resources? The answer is yes. So you have to think about AWS as fundamentally Amazon Web Services. So what it means that AWS resources, the products and the services, whatever AWS provides, are web services or they are APIs. So you have different ways of interacting with this API. You have the web console or the management console that we just saw. You also have an option if you're a person who likes to work in the terminal or on a Linux person or Windows PowerShell. You can also use the AWS command line tool or the CLI to interact with the AWS services. There is also integrated development environments or IDEs, like I'll be showing you Visual Studio today. I've already done a video last week about AWS Cloud9. You can also go ahead and check that out. But you can use IDEs to actually talk to the AWS APIs. You also have software development kits. For example, I have an application. I want to generate, let's say, thumbnail from images that customers are uploading. What will the application be? And write the application, take that image, make it into a thumbnail, and maybe go back and store it onto an S3 bucket from which my customer can go ahead and download it. So you need to talk to S3 bucket, or your application is running on and talking to a database. Maybe you want to talk to the database from your application as well. And that's what software development kits are going to be doing. So AWS also provides its SDKs in many different languages. So if you are trying to build applications, you can use that. And finally, if you are someone who wants to create this infrastructure, you can use different tools that are available, like infrastructure as code. One of them is CloudFormation. There are already also many more options, which I will be discussing slowly in some of my videos, upcoming videos as well. So today, let's look at AWS CloudFormation, which is a more declarative way of defining infrastructure as code. You start by defining a template. Today, CloudFormation supports JSON or YAML-based templates. Now you write this template as a normal text file. Okay, there is nothing special about it. It's just a text file with your JSON or YAML-based code that defines all the infrastructure that you need. You need EC2 instance, you need S3 bucket, you need IAM role, whatever you need. Once you define that into this text file, you provide this text file to AWS CloudFormation service. CloudFormation will actually read this template, and based on whatever resources you have defined, it will go ahead and call the AWS SDK, which will actually call the AWS APIs of those services. So if you have said, I want this EC2 instance, CloudFormation will go ahead and tell EC2 API, hey, the user has asked for this particular configuration, EC2 instance, please go ahead and create it in this account. Similarly, it can also go ahead and delete it. So you can go ahead and update the configurations and so on and so forth. So let's take the same example, right, of that EC2 instance that we wanted to create in our AWS environment. Now, there are some guidelines of how do you define this template structure. We will look at it in a minute, but for now, let's just focus on one part of that template is the resources section. So here you can see that this defines an AWS EC2 instance. So I'm just defining very bare minimum. I can give more options, I can give more properties, but as of now, I'm saying the logical name of this resource that CloudFormation identifies is EC2 instance. I can always say ABC or something like that. EC2 instance, what is the type? It's an AWS service of EC2 service. It's an AWS product, but it's EC2 service. And in EC2, I want to create instance. So if I wanted to create something like a security group, I would say AWS EC2 security group, right? So what is it? What is the resource that I want to create as an instance? Next, I would say that the properties of this instance is that it's a T2 micro instance. It has certain security groups that it should have access to. It should be in the default. And look at it, like this is string, but this is a list. Okay, so it depends on certain properties. Certain properties can be strings, can be list, can be reference to something else, can be a number. So you have to make sure that you're giving the correct property or the types for these properties. And the last is the image ID. Remember we saw in the console, you need an image ID from which it will create that EC2 instance. So that's it. I've just defined a simple EC2 instance in this particular example. Save this file and let's go to our AWS console. Now same, if I need CloudFormation, I can just search for CloudFormation and I will go ahead and click on create stack. So you can see there is an option create stack. So I'm creating new resources. CloudFormation will also ask you 4 things. One is where is this template from? So is your template ready? If yes, then proceed further. If you don't have a template ready, you want to use a sample template, feel free to pick some of the sample templates. There's LAMP, there's WordPress, there's Ruby on Rails examples. So these are samples that you can pick and choose and start learning about CloudFormation or AWS in general. Or you can also create in a template designer. Today, to keep it simple, I'm just doing all of this using the console, and I'm going to keep it very simple because you can also create it via the CLI, via the other places. You can also create a CloudFormation stack to create a CloudFormation stack. So like you can do the whole inception thing, but today we are going to keep it very simple. Yes, my template is ready. Where is that template? Is it on S3 or is it a file that you locally have? Now for me, I locally have a file. So I'm just going to choose that file. It was ec2 instance.json. You can see it automatically uploads this file that I just provided to an S3 bucket in my account. Okay, this S3 bucket is in my account that CloudFormation automatically creates and has uploaded this particular file. Click on next, and there is some issue. There is some CloudFormation is saying in your template there is some unresolved resource dependency EC2 instance 1. So let's check out what's happening. So you remember my resource name is EC2 instance, but in the outputs I've actually given a reference to EC2 instance 1, but there's no resource like EC2 instance 1. So of course it's going to give a error. So I'm just going to solve that, save it again, go back and have to again choose that file because CloudFormation is going to take this new updated file, again go ahead and update it in my S3 bucket. So let's see if the error gets resolved. The error is resolved. Now what do I want to name the stack? This week I learned demo 1. Okay, and I have the options of defining parameters. So I've not shown you that in the template. So let's go back and you can see I've defined 3 parameters here. So what I'm saying is that a user, when they're using this template, they have option of mentioning the different parameters. For example, if I want t2.small and I don't want the default t2.micro, I should be able to give that user that flexibility of selecting it. So instead of hard coding, where I've actually hard coded here .t2.micro, I can just refer. So I'll just say ref, okay, colon, and what was the parameter name? Instance type. So I can say, you know what, go ahead and refer instance type, missing a comma there. So once I save this, and I'll have to go back because I have updated that file, right? So again, upload a new one, go next. And now I have the option of selecting. So instead of T2 micro, I'm just going to go for M4.large. Let's see what instance type it finally launches. I also have option to actually define certain resources that are outside of AWS that I've created outside of this CloudFormation template. So I can mention like, hey, you already have a key pair. Do you want to associate that? If I do, then again, I have to provide that key pair property and provide a reference for it. Same is for SSH location. You can also have patterns that you want to match that, hey, if the user is giving me the right pattern like this, or are they giving me an incorrect pattern and give an error there. Let me remove this. So let's go next. You should also, as a best practice, tag whatever you've been creating. So I'm just going to tag purpose as demo. You should provide an IAM role if you want CloudFormation to perform certain actions. So for example, here I have an IAM role that I have created, CloudFormation will also warn you like, hey, you're using this role, don't please give least privileges for this particular role. Now, if you want to talk about IAM best practices, let me know in the comment section. I'll also talk a little bit more about IAM practices, and I'll also maybe give you some awesome stories from my solutions architect days. So next is stack failure options. For example, I've defined 5 resources, okay, and let's say I've defined these 5 EC2 instances. 3 were created, no problem. 2 of them had some kind of issue with it for whatever reason. So what do you want CloudFormation to do? Do you want CloudFormation to delete all of them, or do you want to keep these 3 and just remove the ones that failed? How do you want to use this? So I'm just going to say, hey, you know what, create all or just delete everything else. There are a lot of advanced options. We're just going to skip that, go to next, and this is just a review phase. Everything looks good, and I'm going to say create the stack. Now CloudFormation will go into create in progress. You go to the event stack and you go ahead and check. So you go ahead and actually check what happened. So now this actually rolled back because I did give a parameter as key name, but I didn't provide a key name. So what I'm going to do is, this is an easy way. I'm just going to remove this because I'm not using it anywhere, right? So I'm just going to remove both of them. I'm not using them. And what will I have to do is, I cannot do anything with this stack because it has rolled back completely. There's nothing I can do with it. I should just go ahead and delete the stack. So delete has been initiated. So let's go back to stacks and let's refresh. It's already gone. So let's go ahead and create a new one. Similar process, just upload the new saved file, TWIL demo. And I'm just going to say, see, did you see that all those parameters, if I deleted from the template, they're already gone as well. So it knows that I've deleted those. Again, going to select m4.large, go next. Forgot to add tags. And I'm just going to say purpose is D has an issue, D, and next, and submit. So keeping fingers crossed, hopefully everything is working. And I'll just go to the event section, and now you can see that EC2 instance resource creation has been initiated. So now that EC2 instance that are defined in the template is now being created. If I need to know more information, I can also go to resources and list down all the resources that it has created for you. So remember, the template is the JSON file, but everything that you define in a template will become a CloudFormation stack. So in this stack, all the resources that are available for this particular stack will be listed here. So it's still in create in progress mode and it's already create complete. So if you want to check out this, click on it and it will take you directly to the EC2 console, and you can see that that instance is running and it's initializing. And yes, it's an m4.large instance that I give in the parameters. Now let's see. I want to not just have one EC2 instance, but you know what? I want to have multiple EC2 instances. For example, I want to create not just one here, but I want to create 2 more EC2 instances. And I want to change the name of this logical instance. Now, think about it. What will happen? I've changed the name from EC2 instance to EC2 instance 1. Okay. And I should also go ahead and update this reference as well, otherwise it will give an error. But what I'm saying here is that these 3 different EC2 instances will have 3 different logical names. Now I've changed the logical name here. Let's go and see what happens in CloudFormation. Let's go back to stacks, refresh it. I'm just going to select this, go ahead and say update. Okay. You also can create a change set. It's a bit advanced. I don't want to cover that right now, but I will show you what happens. I'm not going to use the same template. I'm going to replace this template with the new file. I mean, this is the same file that I've updated. I'm going to say next. And I'm still keeping the instance type. Let's change the instance type to m4.extra large. Go next. Everything is fine. And I'm just going to wait for the change set preview to show me what is going to happen. because I changed the logical name of this resource, CloudFormation will remove this, because for CloudFormation, there is nothing like EC2 instance in that new version of that template. So it will do a diff, like there was EC2 instance, but now there's no EC2 instance. So I think you want me to remove it. So if you want to just add, I would suggest don't change the logical name, okay? And it will create 3 new instances with that logical name. Once I click submit, we'll go to event stack, and you can see that the stack is now update in progress. It's actually creating all these 3 different EC2 instances. Nothing been created. Yes, all these 3 are now create in progress. So let's click on EC2 instance 1, and you can see now it is m4.extra large. So that's how you go ahead and update the stack. So once you're done with your experimentation, once you're done playing with it, it's a best practice that go ahead and delete the stack, because while CloudFormation as a service is free, these are actually EC2 instances in my account. So I'm paying for all these EC2 instances that I've just launched. So the best practice is go ahead and delete it once you're done. So let's look at the template structure. Here is a JSON format of the template structure, but it's similar for the YAML as well. So if you see, the first thing that you have to provide is some kind of template format version. Let's look at this side by side to what we already created. So the template format version is static. Just use the same template format version 2010-0909. Don't think a lot, just add that. Then you can provide certain strings as a description. So for example, in this example, this is an EC2 instance with an elastic IP example. So I'm also saying, hey, this template creates blah blah these resources. There's a warning as well that you will be charged for this EC2 instance, so please create it carefully. The next is metadata, which I'm also going to skip. So I'm skipping few things because I want to keep it beginner friendly. So I'm skipping metadata, rules. I'm also skipping conditions and transform as well. So we're looking at the next structure is the parameters. You saw that I provided an instance type, so key pair, and you saw that we can parameterize it. This is very helpful because you want to make your CloudFormation templates as repeatable as possible, right? And as not so hard coded as well. Like I shouldn't be giving the instance type directly in the template. I should give the user a way to select it when they're launching it. So that, for example, I give the same template to my testing, I give the same template to my production environment. So I'm using the same template. It's just that during testing, I might be choosing smaller EC2 instances, but while production, I can have the option of using the bigger EC2 instances. So it makes it a bit more reusable in that sense. Then you have something called as mappings. Now in mappings, you actually provide different options in a map format. For example, I wanted to provide, let's say, an AMI ID. So what I can do in this case is that I can have those different options that, hey, are you in the right region? Are you in the right configuration? Is this the operating system that you want? Okay, if these configurations are matching, then you can get this particular ID. So let's see an example for the AMI ID. So if I scroll down, you can see that you can actually find in the map based on the different configurations I need. I can find in the map, oh, this is the AMI ID I need, and CloudFormation will replace that. So all the functions are available in CloudFormation. We are not diving deep into functions today, but yes, there are a lot of different functions as well. Then you have conditions. Like I mentioned, you could have the same template for test and production environment. You can add in conditions that, hey, if it's a production environment, don't create these resources, just create few resources as well. So you can have conditions on what kind of resources you want. There is also resources, obviously, where we just saw how you created an EC2 instance. And finally, the output. So when you define something in the outputs, if you go back to the console, I think it should be here that it should show the outputs here. Now the stack is deleted, so it will not show that, but you should be able to see the outputs in this section. And if you're interested to use this output or the instance ID and refer it into a new stack, you can actually do that with the outputs. So that's it. That's the template structure. Now, if you want to build CloudFormation templates, I will share this link in the description, so do check that out. But all the resources that you need to create these CloudFormation templates are available at one place. So you do have your sample templates, you have your snippets that you want to copy paste, or if you go to the developer documentation, there's a big documentation, there's user guides and API references, everything is available. And this is very important. So if you click on reference, it will take you to the CloudFormation documentation. Go to AWS resource and property types. Okay, so for example, let's stick to our example of EC2 instances. Let me find Amazon EC2, found it. Now in Amazon EC2, I can create so many different resources. For my particular example, we created the EC2 instance. So you can see for EC2 instance, so many properties are available. We only picked 3, but actually so many properties are available. Now, if you scroll down, you can also see which are the properties that are required, that you have to have. There is no default, the instance will not be created or the resource will not be created. So you have to have that property. I think for this image ID, let's go down. So image ID is actually conditional because sometimes it might take a default as well, but either you'll get a yes, no, or a conditional. You will also find what is the type. Remember, we had a string and we had a list, so you can identify the type. Sometimes a type is some other resource that it wants you to define and refer it here. So that could also be one thing. And of course, when you do an update, what happens? If you change the image ID, the instance will be replaced. Even if the logical name is same, it will create a new instance type with a new image ID and the older one will be deleted, right? And you scroll down, you can also see the return value. So remember, in the outputs, I refer to that instance. So it by default, like reference refers to the logical ID. There is some differences to some resources, so be aware of that. And you can copy paste examples. So the example section has a lot of examples. So you can simply copy paste these into your CloudFormation template. So that's it. There's so many resources and so many things that I would love to talk about. There are so many best practices and tools that are available for CloudFormation, and there are a lot of tools available for infrastructure as code as well, which I will cover in some other videos. So please do subscribe if you're not subscribed, and hit the like button. Comment below if you want me to talk about any more services. If you have any questions, if something I've not covered, if you want to know more about it, I'll be happy to provide those resources as well. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for sticking around, and see you in the next video.